The Jim and Tara Show, a coffee at hand, partially consumed. Jim not in the studio for another podcast. What are we looking at today? Well, a little bit more on Pierre Poilievre. Seems local media, Sudbury.com or Niagara-on-the-Lake now. These local papers seem to be gaining some traction with their coverage of Pierre Poilievre, not willing to accept the attack on the journalists when they ask him questions or the deflections that he often gives. Nobody like Pierre Poilievre can do a campaign ad quite like this.
To forget what home and hope look like. So let me paint the picture of school children, boys and girls, being welcomed by their teacher at the front of the school as they walk in to learn about reading, writing, arithmetic, and our proud history. Before walking in the door, though, they look back at Dad in his pickup truck who's dropped them off. He rolls down that suburban street with his windows open, in the school zone, driving slowly so that he can hear that beautiful crackling sound of hammers pounding nails into Canadian lumber on newly built and affordable Canadian homes. When he gets to the gas station, he fills his tank with affordable and lower taxed Canadian-made energy. He makes his way out into the countryside where he's going to go and service a well, and he looks out his windows and sees those big, prestigious barley or canola fields, the combines out there doing their work, the cattle grazing on the countryside, producing the best food from the best farmers anywhere on earth. And he looks up, and what does he see? He sees a brand new fighter jet. They're doing a training mission in the sky, getting ready to defend our home and native land. The same plane is soon seen from a university campus where kids are hustling off to class, maybe a bit late, having just procrastinated on that university essay, knowing that when they get to class, they will have the chance to debate freely and fearlessly without worry of being censored. Later in the day, that whole family of the student, that welder, the kids, moms and dads come together for a big family celebration because it's been 10 years since one of the adult kids in the family has been sober and overcome his drug addiction. And they gather around the table to have a big, beautiful dinner to celebrate. Some wonderful venison that was shot with totally legal Canadian firearms. And they sit and they talk about their beautiful past, but even more so about their optimistic future. And as the little ones conk off and it's time to take them home, Grandma and Grandpa see them off to the car, and the car leaves the driveway, and they turn and they look west. And what do they see? They see wheat, foothills, Rockies, and a big blue twilight sky. And they look each other in the eye and they say, "We're home." These are our people. That is our country. This is our home, your home, my home, our home. Let's bring it home.
Well, where can we begin with that? Isn't it patriotic? Isn't it stirring? Did you not find it so? I like the music in the background. That's where my ears go. So I wasn't too concerned, but you just heard the audio. If you get a chance to see the video on this one, I got this one from YouTube, and I think they deleted it. The CPC, Canadian, the Conservative Party of Canada, deleted it from Twitter, which is where they released it. As soon as it got, and I used this word in the previous podcast, ratioed. That means the reaction against the content was so large and so overwhelmingly instantaneous as people began to reverse search the images from the video. And then it ends up that there's a whole bunch of conflicts with the way the Pierre Poilievre comms team, communications team, generated the video to support the audio message that Poilievre was speaking. So behind the words of the school bus, behind the words of dad driving kids to school and driving slowly along so he could open his windows and listen to the sound of a hammer on a nail on Canadian lumber, behind the words that talked about the farms and canola and driving along to the oil fields for Canadian energy, behind all of that, even including the RCAF, the Royal Canadian Air Force, the Air Force being 2 jets. Isn't that inspiring, that to know that we're defended by high technology? Isn't it interesting that many of these visual references to support the audio, the stirring music, the passionate speech by Poilievre, and I felt a tinge of Canadian pride, and until I started wondering, and that's where I'll go now.
So Pierre Poilievre put out an ad talking about how he thinks Canada is so great, except he barely used any stock footage of Canada in it, and it was mostly other countries. The video was not very well received, it was ratioed hard, and then the Conservatives deleted it. Partially because the elementary school classrooms were from Serbia, and the great Canadian suburbs were actually American. The Canadian houses made with Canadian timber were actually from Slovenia. The Canadian cattle were grazing in California. The young Canadian student was a Ukrainian in Kyiv, and it seems as though they may have used the term young, handsome Caucasian when looking for this video, as that's one of the tags. Here's a grandma and grandpa walking in England, the great Canadian foothills of Indonesia. And even for the Rocky Mountains, they had to use mountains in Utah. And the creme de la creme, apparently the fighter jets that he was talking about, were Russian. Listen, I watched the video, I don't think it was really that bad. And I'm not really that upset that they used a bunch of stock footage. It's amateur hour for their communications department, but that's really it. No, the part that really bugs me is that they were ratioed so hard that they deleted it. The Conservatives and Pierre just want to be seen as strong and powerful. When they get bullied, when a bunch of people show that they don't like something, they delete it, they get rid of it, they hide from it. This is not the sign of a strong leader, it's the sign of somebody who is desperate and just seeks validation.
Just seeks validation, the sign not of a strong leader, not of a, well, you know, that speech was pretty good, I gotta admit. He read the cue cards really well, and he did look buff giving that speech with his cowboy hat on, but it's really weak when you face the criticism of the marketplace, when people, the general population, or at least those on social media, give feedback, and it's not good, it's not helpful, and it's critical and damaging, then you delete it. Well, that's not leadership. Stick by what you say. Face the criticism if you really meant what you said in the first place. What was interesting to me was that the ad, which on first glance seems stirring and patriotic, is really, well, do I use the word shoddy? I don't want to be too critical. It was okay, but the details. Is it always a case the devil is in the details? In this case, the use of stock footage, things that were supposed to be Canadian were not Canadian. They were, in some cases, American, in some cases, Eastern European, in some cases, Russian. In the case of the fighter planes, yes, an Su-24 and something else, a MiG. Well, who does the research? Apparently you can reverse search these images, and there are tags on them because you can find the identical images and clips using a Google search, if you know what you're doing and know what to look for. So, yeah, when you see the side-by-side comparisons of, this was in the ad, the campaign released ad on Twitter, or whatever they call it now, Zeeter, Xeeter, I don't know what the name is. Anyway, search it up. You can see the side-by-side, you can see the identical images, the identical clips, and they are not Canadian. Not even the sacred Rocky Mountains were Canadian. What gives Pierre Poilievre? What gives Conservatives, especially given that you're so rah-rah pro-Canada and want to see some big changes because, after all, it's broken. Canada's broken. Well, you sure showed in your clip a whole bunch of things to celebrate in Canada, which is really odd considering you claim Trudeau broke it. Wow. That's kind of interesting. Anyway, that's what I was poking around this morning as I looked at different points of view on this speech, which on the surface was inspiring until you started to look for the devil in the details, or the Russians in the details, or the Americans, or anybody but Canada in a pro-Canada campaign political ad. Could it happen anywhere else? I suppose it does. Should we draw maybe some consolation from the fact that it wasn't AI-based? The whole thing was not AI constructed. That would be another contentious issue. Well, there you go. Political ads, they're going to be part of the campaign. In Canada, the election's coming up in 2025, although by the torrid pace of the Pierre Poilievre campaign, driving his bus around, not his bus, what is it, a Winnebago kind of thing? And making stops in Northern Ontario and then out to the East Coast, down to Niagara-on-the-Lake. Everywhere he stopped, he's saying the same kind of thing. We can, and what's the 3-word slogans? Axe the tax, blah, 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 blah. That's his answer. His policy statement in 3 words or less. I guess you should admire that he can be so succinct. But the trouble with policy is that it takes nuance. There's a lot of innuendo, a lot of things to understand. Shades, I don't know about 50 shades, but certainly shades of meaning. In the meantime, we've got Ontario Conservatives. Ford, what are you doing? A minister of alcohol now? The largest cabinet in Ontario history. But why? And did anyone check out the Ford Fest? Was it really a festival celebrating Ford? And who would want to celebrate Ford? Conservatives, whether Ontario or Canada, seem to be in a bit of a pickle. Jim and Terry Show. That's it for today. Bye-bye.